It's fabulous. Well, aloha and good afternoon. My name is Tara McNally. I'm the new Research Program Officer in the Office of the Vice Provost for Research and Scholarship here at Manoa. And this is the first forum for this academic year. We've rebranded the forum. You may have known it previously as the Faculty Pualu Research Forum. We've renamed it basically to make it a little bit more inclusive of all researchers and scholars here on campus. I'm here today with my colleagues, Chad Walton, who is the Interim Vice President for Research and Innovation for the UH system, and Marcelo Hanza, who is the Senior Executive Director for Corporate Foundation and Donor Relations at the UH Foundation. And today we're going to be talking about the new Office of Strategic Philanthropic Partnerships. Part of the reason I believe I was brought on board is because my background, including my background in medical anthropology and public health, I've also had experience working in philanthropy and with philanthropy for a good part of the last 20 years. So with that, what I'd like to do is hand this over to Chad. Thank you, Chad.
As I almost fall down to get up here. So again, welcome. I want to thank Tara and Marcelo for being partners in this. This has been going on for a lot longer than a couple months. I started working on this project 2 jobs ago. So that's only like 4 months, so it's not that far. But a big question is what is this office and why? So this is formed through a collaboration between the system, so the Office of the Vice President for Research and Innovation, Manoa, through the Office of the Vice Provost for Research and Scholarship, which is Chris Sabine sitting here, and Foundation. And the impetus was to increase philanthropic giving, but strategically. So it was to provide a streamlined process to add value to concepts and themes and ideas going to the foundation. So instead of just a single idea and a single PI or a single person going with a concept, that's fine to start with, but we can add so much value by having the system and the campus and foundation work together to put together a more comprehensive package so that we can add value, try and get more support, and develop relationships between donors and researchers. So the OSPP will provide that guidance, the coordination, the added value, and the access to opportunities so that we can help you understand the best way to do this in kind of a team environment instead of an individual approach. So that's the driver for creating this office. We've already piloted it a little bit behind the scenes. So we have coordination and staffing at all levels. So we have dedicated staff at ORS. We have staff at the foundation. And as Tara mentioned, she came on board to lead the efforts at the Manoa campus side. So we've got the workflows behind. We should be efficient. We should be streamlined. And we should be able to get things done quickly. But the main thing we want to do is develop strategic initiatives, strategic proposals for donors. And with that, I can pass it off to Marcelo to give you a bigger picture of the philanthropic landscape.
All right, aloha everyone. A high-level overview of the philanthropic landscape in the U.S. So, how much money is actually being given away by people? And in 2024, there's about $600 billion in gifts across the U.S. Everybody hearing me now? Hopefully people can hear me now. So in 2024, about $600 billion in philanthropic contributions across the US. And this has kind of steadily gone up since 2015. It's to higher education. There's been about $23.5 billion in philanthropy that's being directed to education. And about 70% of that is to higher education. So a big chunk of that. And when we look at research, we are third. Education is kind of the third largest bucket of funding, of philanthropic funding that goes out in the U.S. And so this 88 billion includes, pre-K all the way up through graduate school. And of that, 61.5 billion goes to higher education specifically. And 44% of that, 44% of that, 27 billion goes to research specifically. So where does the funding for research and higher education come from? You'll see on the left, this is 55% comes from the federal government. You all heard there's significant reductions across the federal institutes, but as of this 2023 is the most recent data that we have, it was 55%. And one of why this is so significant is because federal funding is, when it comes to grants, is so much larger than philanthropic dollars. And so you see on the right, the median federal grant amount in the US was $650,000. That's the median. And for philanthropy, the median is around 45,000. So the University of Hawaii skews higher than this. Our median is about 60 normally, but you can see that, the huge difference in funding. So when it comes to trends in philanthropy, one of the interesting points is it's been steadily increasing over the last decade. It's actually up about 46% over the last 10 years. And people are giving more than ever. And yet the number of donors and organizations that give continues to decline every year. And so you see this on the graph is basically the darker line is the number of dollars given. And then the very rapid decline in the other one is the number of donors. And so what does this mean? It means that there's more competition. You're going after a fewer number of people and organizations. But when you do engage and you engage well, the potential payoff and the dollars raised could be significantly more. And this actually really goes into why we're doing this office. It requires a lot of coordination. One of the largest sources of philanthropic dollars to higher education it does come from philanthropic foundations. There are many different types of foundations, but generally there's about 86,000 philanthropic foundations in the United States. And again, these are some of the largest supporters of higher education, particularly in research. And the thing about these foundations, they have a really broad range of interests and areas of focus. So it could be the arts, humanities, biomedical research. It can be environment conservation, really a broad range. But engaging with these organizations is quite different than engaging with federal institutes. Have really kind of predefined areas of focus and scope. There's a very rigid process for kind of engaging with the federal government. With foundations, there are a number of ways to engage with them, and each one is a little bit different. And so thus kind of triggers the need for coordination around this. So kind of before I hand it over to Tara, is this high level, what is the landscape now? And that is that the executive orders have really changed things for a lot of people. And the philanthropic funders that currently exist, remember there's fewer of them, but with larger capacity or greater capacity, are being sought out for funding much more than they were before. So this creates a lot of competition. And while the overall philanthropic dollars are increasing, so is the demand for support. So again, alignment, coordination, and really thoughtfulness about proposals and how you frame the work that you're trying to get funding is essential. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Tara to kind of walk us through some resources.
So Marcelo has done a good job in terms of framing the moment and where philanthropy and foundations are. And what I want to talk to you briefly about is how different it is from pursuing federal or state money. It really is, it's a different world. And pursuing and navigating philanthropic opportunities, particularly with foundations, really will require a lot more, I would say, homework on your end. And that's where this office can really come in and support you in your work. What we would ask you to do, if you haven't done this already, is really sort of consider your funding needs. What is the scope of the project or initiative or program that you have in mind? And sit down and really craft a 1 to 2 page sort of support document, a case for why you should get funding for this particular project or program or initiative, and then engage with us. philanthropy, particularly with foundations, as I well know, is highly relational. And you have to understand the landscape and be able to navigate it. And that's where we come in with our collective experience, both working in philanthropy and with philanthropy. So funding opportunities, and many of you might know, what these are, but I just wanted to kind of briefly run through them and then talk a little bit about the last one. So open opportunities are any qualified organization can submit a funding proposal to a funder. So this is probably the most similar to your experience with federal circles. An RFP goes out and you respond to it. Semi-open opportunities, this varies depending on the foundation, but with these, what you can do is you can submit a letter of interest or letter of inquiry. You'll often hear the term LOI kind of bandied about. And what the foundation will do is it'll take a period of time. Sometimes it's just a few weeks, sometimes it's several months. They'll review it and then get back to you if they want you to submit a full proposal to them. Limited submission opportunities, you probably heard a lot about that, especially coming out of OVPRS. So these are basically areas of funding where we are limited in terms of the number of applications that an organization can submit. That could be by campus in the case of the university, or it could be the whole system. And then the no solicitation. So this is where it gets interesting. So I used to work for a funder that had a no solicitation policy. So this is basically by invitation only. And this is where you really need to engage our office because we can help you really craft your funding sort of proposal, your funding sort of pitch, and also help you think out and map out how best to engage and get on the radar with the particular funder that you're interested in. This could be at conferences. I've been at many conferences where you may not know it, but there's program officers and senior program officers at those conferences, and they're checking out, work and seeing how well it might align with their particular mission and priorities, which change over time, and aims. So we've mentioned, hey, connect with us. So how do you actually do that? So we have a new website, and this is really going to be sort of a hub for updates and opportunities from the philanthropy side of things, not the federal side of things. And we're going to add more resources over time to this website. You might notice at the top, there's a limited submissions link, and that is going to have an up-to-date list of opportunities from the philanthropy side that you could apply for. So please, bookmark that and keep checking back. And we'll also push these out to you as well. But I want you to also be proactive and just check it out occasionally. You'll notice also there's two buttons at the bottom of the page. One is for funders and the other one says connect. The connect button is for us, the community of researchers and scholars at the university, for you to connect with us collectively. So when you hit that button, what you're going to find is a form. This is based off the Quali platform, and it's a short form, don't worry, with a list of questions. And from the answers, what we're going to do internally is sort of coordinate our response. What type of resources do we need to bring to bear to meet your request needs? And that could be anything from, you're starting from scratch. I don't know who the funders are out there that can fund my particular project. We can help you with that. Or maybe it's very specific. Maybe you have an opportunity in mind. It could be a limited submission opportunity. It could be an opportunity you heard about from a colleague. We can help you with that. So please engage us. We have years of collective experience that we can help you. We're not here to police your relationships with funders. We're here to help you be smarter about how you engage with foundations, because it really is its own particular sort of subculture. And then with that ends the presentation portion of what we're doing. And we really wanted to leave the bulk of time for questions, both on Zoom and in person. And what I would ask in the Zoom portion is if you could put your questions in the chat box, and then we'll go back and forth between questions in the room and then questions via Zoom. Does that sound okay, Zoom folks? hopefully. Great. Thanks. Since everyone, I'm going to give first priority to the folks in the room. Anyone with questions for us, it can be on anything. There's no dumb questions when it comes to philanthropy.
So it seems there are foundations that are set up almost like a funding agency, right? That they do calls, solicitations, and write a proposal and so forth. And then there's kind of the opposite extreme, which is an individual that you may have a relationship with. How do you navigate those differently? How are they different?
Do you want to come up here too? And
By the way, Marcel, that was great information you gave us about philanthropic giving. That was useful.
I think the first thing I would say is if you have a particular funder in mind, is really to do your homework on the funder, like figure out, do they have open opportunities for you to respond to? So that's your first question. If they don't, then I would look at and see what their policy is. Do they put out RFPs, every year, or are they strictly no solicitation only? And then I would and I really encourage you to do this, dig into, if they are a sort of a strategic funder, dig into their strategy, dig into what they've actually funded over the last few years. And we can help you with this. This is why we're here. But dig in, there's usually on each foundation's page, there'll be a grants page. And sometimes it's hidden. Sometimes they do that deliberately. Go to the grants page and really go down and look at all the grants, because you may have excuse me for using coral research as a example, but you may have a coral research project that you really want to fund. And you go through the most recent grants and you realize, they've funded a bunch of coral research last year. And the challenge might be with that, that your program officer is going to have to then go and pitch why your specific coral research is different from the coral research that was funded last year. So that's part of how we can help you, is sort of work through our existing relationships with that funder, if the foundation or the university have any insight on that funder, and then help you sort of craft your proposal in a way that can engage them. Or if there's no solicitation, figure out ways so you can get on the radar of that particular funder, whether it's through going to conferences or big meetings, or where you're publishing your research. There's different ways to approach that.
I would say too that different foundations and organizations have different structures, and they vary in their formality. So foundations that are really driven by individual family members, or a close kind of association of family members and their friends, might have a different level of formality in the way that you engage them, versus a really well-established foundation that has no family members. Maybe it was started by somebody who lived 150 years ago, but their board is now made up of scientists and legal experts. They have a very different way of engaging. And so I think that's another reason for the office, is to assess, well, what type of organization is it? How formal is it? Who comprises the board? And then make a decision and help guide how you engage with them, because it is quite varied.
Anyone online? Wow, there's a lot.
You got a whole bunch. They scrolled off the top too.
Do we have access to scroll? It's not on my laptop. Let's see. It's not here. Hey, Eric, could you scroll up to the top by any chance?
Fortunately, I cannot.
Oh no.
Like, if someone else is joining on Zoom, they could read it to you.
High tech, but not that high tech. Okay.
Start with those.
Let me start with these questions and then we'll figure out. Okay, great. Sorry, folks, having some technology challenges.
There, so
This is the top. Oh, great. Yeah, this is what I want.
it's the top.
Great. Thank
Can you
you.
scroll up?
Okay. Does this move the UH Foundation people out of each college?
The answer to that is no. So the foundation has 120 employees about, and there are central teams and then teams that are decentralized and assigned to each campus and unit. So it's not a complete coverage of the entire UH system. The existing staff who are embedded in specific units primarily work with individual philanthropists. They still remain there. Please engage them. What ends up happening is those unit development officers, when you're approaching an organization or an opportunity that seems to be more of a structured grant or a grant funding opportunity, they engage with this office. So part of the corporate and foundation relations team at the foundation is they also staff this office. So it's really about coordinating across all of the resources around fundraising.
Is there another question in the room? No one? Okay, well, I'll go to Zoom where there's lots of questions. Does UH have access to the foundation directory in New York City?
We have a really extensive repository of funders, philanthropic funders, and opportunities. There's some platforms that we use at the foundation for proactive prospecting and some AI tools that kind of match based on topic area. Sometimes it's proposals that we can do some matching with these AI tools. There are tens and tens of thousands of organizations in the foundation's database currently. It's really about finding the right fit, but the foundations exist all over the world. It's global, all across the country. It's really just a matter of kind of doing a query. So yes, there are resources for that.
Any questions in the room? We got a quiet bunch in the room. Okay, let's go to the next question on Zoom. Is it only faculty can submit proposals? How about staff or PhD students? I'm going to ask you to, since you've been here longer than I have.
I would say it's not restricted to faculty. This PhD students may be a little trickier depending on kind of what the project is, and you might need some more approvals, but it is not restricted to faculty. So if there's a really solid idea, we invite the outreach.
Okay, thanks. Any questions in the room? Okay. Will only projects and RFPs that are coming from other foundations flow through this office? So this office, and feel free to add on to this, is specifically for any philanthropy related opportunities. This is not an office that you would engage if you are going after federal or state funding. That's sort of the large umbrella of our office. If it's federal or state, that's not our purview. Questions? Okay, back to Zoom. What's your strategy for establishing relationships between potential patrons, for example, Oprah and UH researchers?
I can take that one. So really just, this is a case-by-case business. So philanthropy is highly individualized, and I think people are, they're really interested in, really famous individuals, people with really high capacity. But remember, statistically, those individuals, it's actually, it's very rare that they make these gifts or grants that support the day-to-day operations and research at the university. The foundation does have relationships with we call them ultra high net worth individuals and families. It's very unique. And some of them, it's quite a private affair. You have to sign non-disclosure agreements and things like that. So it can be quite sensitive and very unique and individualized. At a certain point, we can align or we can kind of share the institution's priorities in certain types of areas that we think are of interest to a philanthropist. But ultimately, if you're working with somebody with ultra high net worth, you have to negotiate around their interests and how they align with the university. So there's a lot of thoughtfulness around that. It's highly individualized. Hope that helps.
I'm going to assume there's no questions in the room, right? Okay. I may have missed this as I was a few minutes late. Can you clarify the relationship between the foundation and OSPP? Mahalo. So basically, there's several offices that are staffing this. So we're all existing employees of our different entities. But what we are really through this office is we're coordinating our efforts through it. So the foundation is providing staffing. I'm from OVPRS, and then Chad and others are from OVPRI. And basically, when we get a request in, we sit around and figure out who's this going to, how do we marshal our resources? Is there a question here that we can't answer and needs to get, relayed to somebody else? So it's basically trying to coordinate what in the past I think has been a little bit more siloed efforts, and also just since I've been here, just really increasing the communication between the foundation and what's going on at the university. Want to add anything?
It's perfect.
Okay.
Since the room is so quiet, I'll ask another one.
Sure.
Can you put any bounds on the kinds of things that philanthropy likes to support? For example, I've heard it said that philanthropic giving is great for building a thing or buying a thing or a one-time thing versus funding my time series site that needs to run for 30 years.
It depends on the funder. I was in one partnership with the Conrad and Hilton Foundation through as a grantee for over 8 years. So that was through a series of 4 grants over that period of time. So it really depends on the funder. Some funders, once they get to know you and they trust you, they're in it for the long haul. Other funders, it's very much sort of, we're here to engage. That looks like a bright, excuse me for saying this, but bright, shiny object. Let's fund it. And then you need to go find funding from elsewhere to continue that project.
And I think also this depends on kind of the size of the organization, how formal it is, how structured, and then the board composition. So we have foundations that were maybe started by an initial family member or a family, and they have very specific kind of niche interests. They're driven by personal passion, and they give through this philanthropic entity. But as they become wealthier and the foundation has more assets, we see that that usually evolves to have more structure. They hire external staff, they hire attorneys, program officers, directors. And as that happens, their aims and kind of priority areas formalize, and it becomes less and less about any one individual's kind of pet projects and becomes more about mission and priorities. And so it really just depends on each organization and the state that it's in. Even large funders, though, that have been kind of gone from a small family foundation to a very large scientific, foundation that funds a lot of science, there are some categories of fundings that they keep intact. They call legacy funding initiatives, and those are things that maybe through estate commitments or some other legal conditions remain in place because they were the intent was from the founders to continue that. So it's it's nuanced, it's really case by case. And that's why this kind of office is intended to kind of look through, well, what is this scenario? What are you trying to achieve? And is this the right fit or is it not?
Okay. Let's see. I may have missed this, but can you discuss the role limits on indirect costs through this office?
I can talk about that. Yeah. So for those who have worked with the foundation, those who have worked with ORS, the foundation does not have indirects. They have fees that are associated with philanthropic awards. There are differences between the two organizations. The goal of the foundation is to maximize the indirect capture for the university. And so part of the role of this office is to identify which funding opportunities should be directed where. So I'll give you an example. Some philanthropic organizations require a nonprofit status of a 501c3. That's just a funding requirement. In those cases, the foundation serves as the kind of the fiduciary of the funds and then works with UH to deploy them. Others that don't have that restriction, awards can go directly to UH through ORS, and it would go through that process. So it really is, again, case by case. You have to really look at who the funder is, what are their requirements, and then what are you asking for? Is it scholarships? Is it a specific research project? And again, kind of going through the process of where is this best position. So that's part of this office, the role.
Anyone here?
Based on kind of UH's foundation giving history, what are some of the breakdowns of funding per topic? Like, what is the environment kind of funding pool looking like? What is arts and culture looking like for UH specifically?
That's a good question. I don't have the buckets, kind of the categories as you described. That's actually something that we're working on, as to how do we align and kind of capture the thematic area that these opportunities fall into, and then kind of report on that. I can say generally where philanthropy supports within academic settings, STEM is one of the largest areas, just off the top. And then you move into some of the basic sciences are actually next. And then you kind of go down into the humanities, then more niche areas. So operational dollars tend for philanthropy. So those that are not endowments, those awards that are meant to be spent down to nothing. Over half of those actually are directed towards higher education research in philanthropy. The endowed components support other things like positions, scholarship funds. They'll do professorships, deanships, things like that. Those are intended to be sustained over time. So it really depends on the gift type, whether it's intended to be spent down to zero or whether it's intended to last in perpetuity. And that directs some of the areas that are supported. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Online is part of OSPP's role to help connect units for collaborative submissions. I think you were talking, do you want to talk a little bit about this one?
Yes, so the answer would be yes to that. So we're hoping that when these ideas come in and get submitted, that collectively we can sit around and talk about, are there additional people to add to this from different campuses, through our own networks. So we want to build that more comprehensive strategic proposal, and that would be expanding it to different folks as well. So yeah, we will be supporting that.
Anyone? No one? Okay. If a limited submission only allows one submission per organization for each cycle, how do PIs submit a proposal and know if UH will submit their proposal? So with limited submissions, so I'll speak for this campus. If you are going after an opportunity, and what we would ask is that you give us, I believe it's 30 working days notice at least, so we can also gauge and see if anyone else if it's on the campus or at the system level is interested in that particular opportunity. If there's more than, say, one application, say that's the requirement, it's one, then we would have to run an internal competition, and we would pool reviewers, depending on whether it's the campus or the system level, to review those applications and make a decision on whom we should submit for that opportunity. So there's an internal review process that goes on, and it's led by your peers. Anyone? Okay. Will all opportunities assisted through OSPP run through UHF or UHORS? For example, in other words, proposal submission and awarding.
And this is kind of related to the former question. It depends on what the opportunity is. If there's a proposal to fund a professorship or an endowed fund, obviously the foundation is positioned to manage endowed funds. But if it's for a specific research topic, or a project where the funder has no restrictions on where the funding goes, or the grantee, if for, say, they award to the university, it could go to the university ORS. So again, that's part of the office, is to determine, based on the funder's requirements, where this and what the proposal is, where the funds are directed. But again, the goal is to maximize the capturing of indirects to benefit UH.
Do our applications still run through ORS for foundation applications?
It depends on what it is.
Right.
Just like the last one, it's yes, it depends.
Will this office also streamline the turnaround time for setting up and granting the PI project access to receive grant funds?
I can speak to this. So it depends where the funds go, if they go to the foundation or to UHORS. Part of this office was actually, we have representation from ORS, grants and contract specialists, to look at philanthropic grants that are received by the university, and to look at the agreements between the university and the University of Hawaii Foundation. So there is the intention to accelerate the turnaround time for that. Some things just take a long time. It depends how complex it is and kind of the situation, but part of it, the intent of the office is to accelerate the process, but there are caveats to that.
And I think part of what might help in the future is that we're going to have a new internal grant platform. Is that correct?
Yeah, we're working on an enterprise system for managing all the grants, all the components of it. So it should streamline the front end when we're trying to decide what to do with these proposals, because there's going to be compliance issues or reporting issues that may come up, and that will help decide where it goes. But with the streamlining internally to ORS, that should speed things up as well.
I have a proposal. Who can submit to you? Can you specify, should I be UH faculty, staff, a group? Sure.
I think probably a starting point is to go to the website and
connect with
submit
us.
the form. If it's a limited submission opportunity, there's a place that you can kind of select that. If it's from a specific funder, you put that in. And again, what happens is once you submit the form, there's a process that kicks in. There's a group that reviews it and tries to say, well, what is it that's needed here? And then directing it to the right group or person. There is an intake process. So somebody on the foundation side does an initial screening and reaches out and says, well, let me seek clarification, and then can redirect after that. So I would encourage this person to submit a request through the OSPP website.
Final question, which is great, or not even, it's a statement. Funders do not always give 30 business days notice. Yes. So okay. So if it's a limited submission opportunity, say it pops up and it's less than 30 business days, please contact us through OSPP, and then we will, I come out of public health, triage your request and figure out next steps for you. To give you some insight sometimes why funders do that. So I don't know if you know this, but for foundations, there's an internal revenue service requirement that they need to get at least 5% of their endowment out the front door every year. And sometimes the stock market is very friendly, and there might be some extra money that they decide that they want to give to a certain cause, and the turnaround time is pretty quick. Other times, things happen in the environment. You've seen some of the funds that have come out of private foundations to, help researchers with some of the issues that are happening at the federal level, especially around the DEI funding. Those also sometimes can come out relatively rapidly. And there's always sometimes pots of money that they'll tap into for those type of funding. So you just need to really keep your eyes out there. And again, it's highly relational. Sometimes you may just happen to know the program officer and they send you an email, by the way, this funding opportunity is coming up. I'm concerned that proposals in arts, culture, and humanities will not be selected if social sciences and hard sciences submit an application for foundations with single submission limit. From my experience, if there is, whether it's a limited submission opportunity or you're responding to an RFP, those tend to be pretty focused. I don't think I've seen many that would cover both the hard sciences, the social sciences, and the arts and humanities. I don't know, do you have?
Yeah, I mean, it's, I have not come across that where you see a funding opportunity that's so broad. Because remember that on the receiving end, of then when when a funder is putting out an RFP, they have to review everything that comes in, right? So if it's so broad that it could be anything, they've got to read it. And so they tend to kind of narrow down and say, actually, this is what we're looking for. These academic disciplines, this is the theme of the RFP. Here are the conditions, the requirements. This is what we're looking for. So I have not come across such a huge open RFP that anybody for anything could apply. It's usually driven by theme first, subject area, and then usually there's an amount.
And I would say that I think take both the arts, culture, and humanities and the social sciences. This is not a knock on the hard sciences, but I think the advantage that you do have is that funders are looking for a good story, a good hook. Why should I, as a program officer, go before the board and say, this is why you should fund this particular project? And often, you as coming out of arts and humanities or social sciences, this is what you do. You are storytellers, you craft stories, you do research in these areas. So in that respect, you do have an advantage when it comes to working with foundations because you know how to tell stories. And that's what they're looking for.
And I would say that the way limited submission review is set up, that the committee that does the review would actually reflect what the proposals coming in are.
Right.
So the peers would be selected would represent those areas as well. So if they can make a story for the best science and the best proposal, that will come out of the committee for sure. It'd be a very diverse committee, but
Right.
but I would say it reflects what comes in. It wouldn't be said as like all hard science or all hard humanities. So
I mean, the selection internally at UHM, if there are more than two applications to a foundation and UH has to choose.
that's how they work. Yeah.
That's
So
how- yeah.
so if it's limited to one and there's two, then that's what will trigger the peer review committee and what we were just talking about. Yeah.
Yep.
That's standard for all limited submissions, not just a Philanthropic site.
Any other questions from either online or in person?
So I've got a donor I'm talking to that says that he wants to give me some money. Why should I come talk to you? Why do I need to get you involved? Why can't I just do it myself?
Well, first and foremost, it depends who you're talking to. Is this like your best friend who happens to be really wealthy? They'd be like, well, probably best position is to keep talking. But again, it's really case by case. If a program officer from a significant foundation reaches out and says, I have been made aware of your work, I would like to discuss your work with you. Again, I think Tara said it, the goal is not to police the relationships, it's to really help amplify them. And so sometimes if you're focused on your work, and sometimes you can get a little bit of tunnel vision and you under ask, basically. This happens quite a bit.
Yeah.
Is sometimes when you are focused on, okay, I need 150,000 because I've got to fund a GA and some other travel costs and whatever, and you haven't thought through the funder, what is the potential there?
Right.
There is the possibility of under asking. There's the possibility of over asking significantly and then kind of killing the opportunity. So I think engaging, if you have a development officer who's assigned to the unit that you're in, I would engage them as a first step. If it's an individual, particularly, they're happy to guide you through it. Otherwise, if it's an organization, they would connect with this group anyway, and we would do some background digging, some due diligence to see, well, what is this and kind of what's the opportunity? Because there's a lot of nuance there. Does that answer your question?
And then how can we contact you folks? Let me go back up. This is, hopefully everyone can see it. This is our website, research.hawaii.edu/UHOSPP. And you also should have this, and I think we've received several emails, both from UH Comms and then also OVPRS, just advertising this and it should be contained in those emails. Any other questions from anyone? Well, with that, thank you all for attending, and please reach out to us. We are collectively, we have a lot of experience and we're here to help. Again, we're not here to police you or take away your funders. We're here to help you, especially in this dynamic and challenging funding environment. So thanks to all of you. Mahalo.
Is it? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.